Hello, and welcome to this edition of Sharing Our Journey. This coming Sunday is All Saints Sunday, and I'd like to share with you the first lesson appointed for All Saints Sunday. It's from the book of Revelation in the 7th chapter. After this, I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white with palm branches in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God, singing, "Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." Then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these, robed in white, and where have they come from?" I said to him, "Sir, you are the one that knows." Then he said to me, "These are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple. And the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eye." The book of Revelation. It's a popular one. I was leading a Bible study in my dormitory my freshman year of university and asked the friends I had gathered together who wanted to participate in this study, "What would you like to study?" 7 out of 7 said, "The book of Revelation." One fellow actually didn't know the name of the book, but he said, "Let's study that one with the dragons and stuff." Okay. The book of Revelation has been controversial and I will dare say confusing since it was set into the canon hundreds of years ago. Some people have a great deal of certainty as to what it means and some do not. For some, it is a detailed look at what the end times are going to be. For others, it is a singular story about how the people of God survived persecution and how, as Billy Graham once said, the story ends and God wins. And by God winning, we mean the new Jerusalem, the new heaven, the new earth, and God and God's children living in eternity in peace and beauty. The reason I caution about the book of Revelation is a troubling trend I've seen in how it's seen, interpreted, and used. There's a bit too much, I think, within some circles of Christianity to look at the book and say, "Oh good, we win, and they suffer." And they are, well, whoever we want to put in there. It can be quite a list. All the people that, and kinds of people we think oppose the gospel. Now, granted, most of that time it's people we don't like, people with whom we disagree, and we quite literally baptize that opinion and make it God's business to punish all of them. Well, I'd like to ask us to slow our roll a little bit on that. It's the same caution I give when I preach on the parables. We need to be careful that we don't cast the parables too quickly, fill the roles too quickly, because we quite often put ourselves in the best spots in those stories when that's not necessarily where we're intended to be. Same thing with the book of Revelation. We stand on the mountaintop and look down on those who suffer, and it's a dangerous thing because I think it runs afoul to the answer Jesus gives when he was asked to summarize the law. What is the greatest commandment? And he answered there are really two: love God, love your neighbor. And there's not much in loving our neighbor that involves in figuring out how best to make them suffer. And so, that loving our neighbor thing, I've mentioned it in messages and in sharing our journeys before. Loving our neighbor, I think, is really our first step. Now, I'm not saying that missions is bad, evangelism is bad, that we shouldn't share our faith, that we shouldn't be, I use the word proud, but confident in our faith and reassured by it. But let our faith fuel the question, how do I love my neighbor, and not who's going to suffer. So in this moment, right now, and in the moments to come, let that be our question. How do I best love my neighbor? And leave the rest of it to God. I think it's best left in God's hands. This past Sunday, we visited about masking in church. About singing and masking. We talked about singing, and that story has not changed much. The Alberta Health Services have put out new guidelines, guidance for places of worship. This is available on the Alberta government website. And the recommendation is still no congregational singing. There are allowances made now for soloists, for other kind of performance of music, and we'll be looking at ways of enhancing our use of music in worship. But for the foreseeable future, congregational singing will not be a part of that. The masking conversation I thought was kind of interesting. The proposal was that we mask one Sunday a month. It was shared with us that there were those who would come to worship if they knew everybody was going to be masked. They have health issues that would cause them to be anxious around too many people who weren't masked. But if we could have a Sunday where everybody was masked, then they would be able to come. It's a good thing. Well, the first few responses were, we should be masked every Sunday. Granted, this was after two big upswings in our active case count. We had another just a couple of days ago. And so people are nervous. I'm nervous. How committed are we really to arresting this thing? How committed are we really to doing what we need to do for our neighbor to bring those numbers down? Well, our active cases hit 100. And at 100, a city bylaw kicked into effect. That means that everybody is to be masked in all public places and on public vehicles. And so that's where we are at. We need to mask. And so our conversation about should we have one Sunday has turned into we need to have 2 Sundays where masks are worn. It's interesting. One of the people who responded Sunday said, and I'm not going to say who they are. I don't have their permission to do that. But they said, I think it's going to be just a couple of days and this is going to be mandated. And sure enough, Monday is when it was mandated. So the next 2 Sundays, the 1st and the 8th, the 2 Sundays in the 2-week period of this bylaw, everybody's going to be asked to mask. Now, as I understand the bylaw, if our numbers come down, the 2 weeks resolves, and we go back to the weird, odd new normal we were in before the bylaw kicked in. If our active cases rise above 100 again, the 2 weeks starts all over again. So now's our opportunity to get a handle on this, do what we need to do, mask, wash our hands, keep distanced, do those things we know we need to do to keep those active cases down and keep people safe. So the 1st and the 8th are going to be everybody mask Sundays. We have masks, we have hand sanitizer, we have taken precautions in terms of blocking off certain pews, all of which to be able to observe the guidance and regulations as much as we can. This coming Sunday is also a special Sunday at Trinity. We are honoring our office administrator who is retiring. People of Trinity know who she is. I'm not going to mention her name. I should have asked today, but I don't have permission to do that and to send it off onto the interwebs. But we are going to be honoring her as best we can. If this was a typical Trinity honoring event, there'd be lots of coffee and cake and visiting and laughing. But we can't do that. So we will do what we can do. There will be a treat, not cake eaten together, but there will be a treat. And we will honor Dorothy. You may have seen some of these drive-by birthday parties. Well, we're going to have a walk-by honoring. And so if you're able, please come and bring a mask or wear one of the ones that we have. Wash your hands and let's honor her and do what we need to do. And so, love your neighbor. Let's not worry about the wild stuff of relation right now. Love our neighbor. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Stay distanced. And as always, be safe, be well, and God bless you all.